Hi, everybody. Let's and we are 1,774 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks on Fort Bliss, because they had authority to do that. You see, they had authority. The prime suspects are the former CID agent Vita Nusa, who then had his badge terminated in 2021. And then, of course, his platoon leader, Dallas Hart, who was implicated by his mother, Leilani Hart, another prime suspect, in an affidavit of the worst type of crimes against children, and having films about the worst type of crimes against children, and many other offenses, even Leilani Hart's own immigration problems, right? Her own immigration problems. This is the thing when people just come into the country and they don't want to be vetted, they don't want to do things the right way. What are they hiding? She has a long criminal record that dates before Richard was even born. That dates before Richard was even born. She's been causing problems, committing crimes wherever she goes. And to come and then tamper, because a whistleblower, the whistleblower, I would say in Richard's case, that filed in his official capacity, Judge Roger Rodriguez, um, naming names, that is very courageous to put everything on the line, especially in this world, in this judicial system that is heavily compromised, to do the right thing and write a document, a whistleblower report that names names, that identifies prime suspects in the murder case of a whistleblower soldier, that the media, that the CID, that the FBI do not even want to get out there that he was a whistleblower. We had to give that to the public. We had to investigate and then find out that Richard was a whistleblower, right? That he was a whistleblower. And then we had to present that. And then, of course, as the files came out, the evidence confirmed that he was a whistleblower. And so for Judge Roger Rodriguez to be courageous, and on January 18th, we'll never forget it, January 18th, 2022. So this is a year and a half later. He is realizing that he has to let everyone know that Richard Halliday's case has been tampered with, that the files are being leaked, that the files are being tampered with, and that needs to be investigated. Now, a year and a half before that, we submitted a um, a document to the Department of Justice asking that too, because we knew that Richard's case was being tampered with, that Richard's case, there was something fishy going on. And we asked Washington, D.C. To for the Biden administration to look into this, what was happening. You would think that he would want to do that, since, Richard was the witness for President Trump. He was the witness for President Trump's investigations into the criminal trafficking going on at the front door of the United States, which is El Paso, the borderland, the southern border. That southern borderland is the front door into the United States. You would think that they would want to make sure that the FBI were doing their job there, that the CID was doing their job there, that they were securing our nation, that they were securing our military installation. And so, but here we go, a year and a half later. Judge Roger Rodriguez is doing that work. He's doing that work. He's filing with multiple agencies, and they wouldn't even have called us to let us know that he had identified suspects in the murder case of our son. They wouldn't have even have let us know. He's the one that called us and let us know that he filed those whistleblower reports. And they were, I think they were shocked. They were shocked. I think that they thought that they could, be so bold. And you see that in Los Angeles right now. They're so bold, they think that they could just get away with all this criminal behavior with impunity, that they can just be mean and spit and ungrateful and, all the seven vices, the gluttony, the theft, everything that's bad, the maliciousness, the absolute maliciousness, the no concern at all for life, no concern at all for property, and no concern at all for what that's going to cause the taxpayers later on, no concern at all. And this is, very clear that these people that we've witnessed in Los Angeles, they've been set up, they've been groomed, they've been absolutely um, for political uh, agendas, right? And they don't even know they're pawns. They're pawns. Some of them might know, some of the leaders might know, but I think they're pawns. And I've said this for years that these migrants are going to be used and abused. They're going to be used and abused. They're set up. They're here illegally. They need to go back for their own safety, for their own character, for their own autonomy, for their own. They need to go back, and then they can apply legally to come into the country, and then they won't be pawns. Then they won't be used and abused, and they can be vetted. And the criminals that want to sneak in like a Trojan horse with there's all these numbers, and I think the going number right now is 13 million that were coming in. Think of all the Trojan horse uh, uh, criminals that were able to sneak in with that, right? Amongst all of that, and use and abuse those that were coming over because they were promised, right? They were promised that they could just act illegally with impunity and then come and get everything for free and have this life. But it doesn't work like that because nothing is free. They want to control. They want to control the people and the masses, and they groom them and then just think of all the crime that they had to endure as they were migrating. So it's just they need to go home. They need to all go home. The criminals need to be arrested, like Leilani Hart. She is absolutely a great example of that. And President Trump, today we got word that President Trump is going to speak at Fort Bragg. He's going to speak at Fort Bragg. And it's going to be interesting to hear what he has to say because our military is a big mess. Now, he, of course, as the commander in chief, he has to, put on some rose colored glasses for the population, for the military to but I'm just sick of all the rose colored glasses. I'm sick of the lies. I'm sick of, and I understand you, esprit de corps. I understand. My husband, 30 years, I supported the military. There's a picture that the enemy uses of me as a clown because of during the Gulf War. I entertained the children for the families, for the troops that were coming home from the Gulf War and wanted to spend some time with their wife and at these big parties, these big celebrations, these big barbecue cookouts. And I was part of a group of grateful Americans that we decided to paint faces and juggle and make animal balloons and do some magic tricks. And yes, I can juggle. Yes, I can juggle. Boy, you see that with this whole case, I've had to juggle. And yeah, so I absolutely did that for our troops coming home to entertain the children so that they can have a great barbecue, that they can enjoy the time with their family that they missed so much for months and months of deployment. Matter of fact, Rob, um, my husband, he was deployed 18 months. 18 months. He he was deployed for a year. He came home, and then his unit deployed, and so he had to deploy for another 6 months. So he was attached. You know, this is what physician assistants have to do. He was taken away from his unit and attached to a unit that was deployed during Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and Desert Storm. And when he came back, then his unit went and he had to go with his unit. So it was 18 months. 18 months we had to, that was a long deployment, um, especially when you have little children. So I absolutely knew that. That the couples, the married couples that have been separated for so long, needed to have some time together, just to catch up. And so, yes, absolutely, we understand all of that. We're very patriotic. Um, but I am sick and tired of all the lies, the unnecessary wars for these huge contracts, what it has done, destroying our trust, our authentic mission as Americans. It has absolutely destroyed what we're all about, and it has allowed the criminals to come into our military and participate with the fraud. Because, so I'm hoping that President Trump stops this talk of the fraud. Our military is in big trouble. We have absolute mutineers as generals, mutineers. He needs to absolutely bring back Mealy. He needs to bring back Garrett. He needs to bring back McConville. He needs to bring back Clem Coward. And I'm sure other families have other generals that they want brought back and go through a court martial. Stop the lies about, rose colored glasses, we're just doing so great, we're the biggest fight, whatever. Because you think that China doesn't know, you think that Russia doesn't know the problems that we're having. I mean, just look at our advertisements that we've been putting out for the last 10 years. I mean, or at least 4 years. Some of them, just this DEI, woke madness stuff that have nothing to do with the power of our military. So, and I know I am a huge supporter of the military, but not for the lies. If we have problems, we need to face the problems, and the traitors need to be stripped. They need to be stripped, just like CID Tavita Nusa his badge was terminated. His badge was terminated. This is what we need to do to these leaders that have absolutely wrapped themselves up in foreign and domestic enemy flags and are serving foreign and domestic enemies instead of the commander in chief and the Constitution of the United States, the land and the people, and promoting the love for the land and the people. And this is what our leadership has failed to do. They have lined their own pockets while being traitors. And this is what I'm hoping, President Trump renamed Fort Bragg. They were trying to name it, what is it, Fort Liberty, I think that they did. And he said, no, we need to get back to Fort Bragg and we need to face reality. And I hope that that's what he does today, that he faces reality, that he tells the American people the way it is. Because look at what we're having in California. We're going to lose part of our country to this madness, right? This is the madness. And El Paso is a failed city. It does not even have a DA, a legitimate DA. It hasn't had two in a row, not even legitimate DAs. It doesn't even have legitimate judges on its MAC court. It doesn't even have a legitimate medical examiner, chief medical examiner. It doesn't, this is the federal court. You had the Mayela Crucius marriage going on, and it doesn't even have a legitimate press there. The media is absolutely compromised. Not only are they compromised, but they are part of the criminal trafficking cartel-tied gang, cartel-tied criminal group that targeted Richard as early as 2019. They were targeting him. They were targeting him, and they weren't reporting that he was a whistleblower. The command was not protecting him as a whistleblower. They set him up. He was forcibly removed from his barracks room, and they took his life. Then they disrespected his remains, buried him in different locations. One confirmed in Juarez, Mexico, by Nidal Baem, who is related to this law enforcement, related to the command of Richard, related to Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado, related to the Texas Ranger that was assigned to our case, Gustavo Sanchez, related to the chief of police of the El Paso ISD, which is Manuel Chavira, and connected absolutely to Nieto and his wife, Hernandez, right? Cynthia Hernandez, who is intelligence on Fort Bliss. She works in the intelligence office on Fort Bliss. And he's saying that Richard's dead. They found his remains. The FBI were in Juarez. They found his remains. He's dead. They were looking in 5 more places. That kind of confused the cashier. She was like, 5 more places, because she didn't understand what happened to Vanessa Guillen. She didn't understand that they were law enforcement, that they knew that they had to get rid of the evidence. They had to get rid of Richard's remains. They did not want, and this is Sean Bernabe, one of the traitor generals that absolutely need to be stripped from our beautiful uniforms, stripped from our beautiful stars, and because he said we can't have another Vanessa Guillen. We can't have another Vanessa Guillen situation, meaning finding the remains and knowing exactly what happened to Richard. And of course, we know that because of all the evidence that they took his life. Of course, we know that. But we want his remains. And we had a general that operated against us, obstructing justice, signing his name, putting his name to false claims against Richard, false designations of Richard. It's so criminal. And this is why we hope that President Trump today, and I know he knows way more than I do, right? He knows what's going on behind the scene way more than I do. But he knows this because Charlie Kirk, I looked up his name again. Charlie Kirk made a very good point yesterday. He said that President Sheinbaum, Mexican President Sheinbaum, is really the most dangerous leader to the United States. It's all of this substances that come across the border that's killing our people. And it's not just the substances, it's the money behind it, the whole network behind it, what it's doing. It's making people mean, it's making people uh thieves, it's making people fraudsters, it's making people murderers, it's making people the worst type of people. And when it comes to the trafficking, if you're doing the human trafficking, the child trafficking, then the weapons come with it, then the money laundering comes with it, then it is a domino effect of criminal behavior. And with all of that criminal behavior, you have to cover it up. You have to cover it up. And by covering that up, you have to target people, you have to target witnesses, you have to intimidate witnesses, you have to become a bully, then you have to tamper with timestamps, right? Like Bill Hicks tampering with this timestamp, like James Montoya. These two illegal prosecutors. They're illegitimate prosecutors, and they were tampering with timestamps because they're all brought into this domino effect of criminal activity. And so then they tamper with timestamps, which is what the foundation of justice. So they obstruct justice, and then we don't have to like, oh wow, how did this happen? How did we become a failed state? Because in order to cover up, you have to have someone in HR, right? Human resources, to place people into the El Paso ISD chief of police without having a peace officer's license. That was Manuel Chavira. He got that job without a peace officer's license. It was just a big mess. It was just a big mess. And then you have to have your family member, you have to have your connections, or you know intimate connections to a Nieto, so that he pushes to keep Manuel Chavira from scrutiny. So this is another crime. And then you have the CID involved, or the Texas Rangers involved. And then they're so compromised, and they've committed so many crimes themselves, that they become part of the criminal gang. It's just the grooming of criminals and in our system. And then you're like, okay, now I understand why we have a failed government. And this, you can see it in Mexico, and it's a failed state. It's a failed state. Mexico is a failed country. And let's cry. Now we understand why Jesus was crying as he was walking, because he knew that the corruption, the compromise was so bad that that it was a failed state, and he was crying. He was unhappy about that. I mean, Mexico is absolutely beautiful. It has so much potentiality, just like the United States. We have all this potentiality. We have the future of our children to think about. And yet here you have, what, 80 executions in May alone. You have like 7 of their provinces or states being absolutely ruled, governed by the Mexican cartel. And they don't tolerate what's going on in Los Angeles, the burning and the throwing of stones on police cars. And so that's why we don't need any more rose-colored glasses speeches. We need the truth. We need to face the facts, and we need to say, yes, these generals, we have plenty of amazing, amazing men and women in this country that can become generals. And my problem with this too is that this seeps into the Senate Arms Committee, right? Because the Senate Arms Committee, knowing what a thug, what a traitor that Sean Bernabe uh, is, gave him a star. Gave him a star. So see, this is the problem. It has been a domino effect that's been going on for a long time. And, and it is so dangerous to speak about it, right? But, we just, uh, so many have contacted us. We have so much evidence. We have documented the evidence. We have filed the evidence. It is very clear. We have, uh, you know, the connection with Angela Korcherga is just so alarming. She's also a traitor media person. This is Bob Moore's group targeting, and Bob Moore's a partner in this group is Kathleen Gannon, his wife, and Angela Korcherga. There's a couple others. I think it's Zulinka Negron, right? Wouldn't that be something if she was one of his partners? But there's a whole group of them, right? A whole group of them not reporting on the facts, creating a media that was just to protect court cases that would implicate them, right? That would uh, because anytime there's a story, it's considered evidence, right? Oh, New York Times said this, it must be true. Oh, USA Today said that, it must be true. You know, uh, they do that, and those are used in court cases. Those are used as evidence, and so they control this media to control justice, to control right? They want injustice, they want impunity, and they control it to control the masses from demanding justice. They control it to control the masses to commit crimes, right? To demand justice where for a fake reason, right? It's just we need to hold these people accountable for their false witness statements, their fake stories. Being a false witness is a violation of one of the 10 commandments. And look, God doesn't have many laws, right? He has 10 commandments, and that has about 413, I think it is 413 case laws with it. It's very easy to learn. Anybody could go and understand the kingdom of God and the laws of God. Anyone can understand it. But in today's world, we have buildings and buildings and buildings with laws and regulations that they can make anybody innocent and anybody a criminal. And false witness is one of the 10. It must be serious. It must be very damning. It must be very dangerous. It must be, really damaging. And this is what Bob Moore has engaged in. He's a pathological liar. Matter of fact, a soldier who is one of the witnesses in this case said, people weren't believing Richard. People weren't believing Richard because he said he was born in Poland, because he grew up in Ireland, in Longford, Ireland, that he lived in Heidelberg, Germany, that he was homeschooled, that he traveled to South Korea, that he had done, black belt in karate, and he played the piano beautifully, and all of these things. They were like, I mean, he had a wonderful life. He had a wonderful life, and he had because and I was his teacher, not his teacher, facilitator, I guess, facilitator, because you put all this beautiful stuff in front of your children so that they can learn beautiful stuff, beautiful music, beautiful culture. their Christianity. I wanted him to be ready for an answer. Ready for an answer. I wanted him to absolutely understand his baptism, absolutely understand all of the sacraments, so that he could have the joy of the gifts of God, that he could have the joy of his salvation, that he could have a skip in his walk, that he could serve this country faithfully with the full armor of God, right? And he did. And he did. And they didn't believe him. They didn't believe him. And there was a lot of false witnesses, like Bob Moore, who has the pen. And the pen is very dangerous when you're writing false stories. And what did they do? In when they secured Bill Hicks as the imposter usurper DA, when they because Bob Moore was involved in the scheme to remove Yvonne Rosales. See, Yvonne Rosales was in that office until the end of 2022. And as soon as they got Bill Hicks in, they went after Judge Roger Rodriguez. They targeted Judge Roger Rodriguez. And we didn't know. We didn't know any of this was going on. We just all of a sudden knew that he was being targeted. And we're like, wow, why is he being targeted? And that's why we looked into everything. That's why we put a timeline together, because we knew something was really stinky. And when you put the timeline together and you see when they started, when they did the Walmart mass shooting, what was Trump doing at that time? What were the investigations about? What were the executive orders about? What was going on Fort Bliss? The audits going on, about the weapons, all the weapons that were unauthorized, and the criminal trafficking going on. And then, so you put everything together on a timeline, and you see the fraud going on. You see the fraud, you see what was being investigated, you see why they wanted to cover things up. You see that why Richard was dangerous to them, because he was a witness for the investigations of the fraud that President Trump was investigating, his administration was investigating at the time. And then you ask, what was Yvonne Rosales investigating at the time as the prosecutor? Well, she was investigating El Paso Community Foundation for the fraudulent distribution of the Walmart mass shooting victims funds. And then that leads to Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia and all of her fraud, and getting like what, $200,000 of that money. And she wasn't even qualified. She wasn't even qualified. She was impersonating. And she tampered with documents to impersonate. And so it sounds kind of confusing, but when you put it all together in the timeline, you're like, aha, aha. No wonder she targeted Richard. She targeted Richard. Her family was in possession of Richard's credit cards after he had his life was taken in the line of duty on Fort Bliss. And so then they targeted us because they didn't want us to look into Richard's, they didn't want us to find out that he was a whistleblower. And so they were just feeding us all kinds of false stories. They were giving false stories to Stars and Stripes. Remember how upset I got? If you can go back and look how upset I got about the false story and Stars and Stripes, and then Bob Moore, all the false stories, and we would be like trying to contact him, and he didn't want to hear about us. They wanted. I talked to Angela Kachurga, and all they were concerned about was targeting Judge Roger Rodriguez. Well, that put a red flag up. That put a red flag up because they used convicted criminal Leilani Hart to target Judge Rodriguez, who on January 18th, 2022, named Leilani Hart, convicted criminal Leilani Hart, as a suspect in our son's case, as tampering and interfering with the investigation, with receiving leaked files. And she's the mother of Richard's platoon leader, Dallas Hart. And let me tell you that information that we have evidence that is true. And they are just, that's going to be the one of the linchpins in all of this. I mean, Nidal Baem is a linchpin. Manuel Chavira and the Chavira LLC, the RNA Chavira Auto LLC, that's a linchpin in all of this, because Bob Moore's daughter is part of that. Well, family. So this reveals so much, all the connections. All the connections. And they just had it all. And that's not good, because then it becomes very, very obvious. It becomes very, very obvious. And so this is what President Trump has to address, because it went right there onto Fort Bliss, right there. And Fort Bliss was part of it, and these generals were part of it. Michael Garrett was totally part of it. And then they even brought in, like, it was even going into the Marines. The domino effect of this criminal corruption was going into the Marines. Yeah. So, and you never can forget, I can't forget the video of the Walmart mass shooting, where he's walking into it and there lies Alexander Hofmann. There lies Alexander Hofmann, the German national. This is very international. This is, it gets very deadly. And that's why, we hope, we just feel like we need to get this out there, so that President Trump, who has amazing support, the LA riots has given him amazing support, because it's so obvious that the leadership there do not have the best intentions for the United States of America and Americans. And even for the migrants, they could care less about these migrants. I mean, they are telling them to be criminals, and you have the Mexican president to tell them to be criminals, to continue in this grooming of criminality. And can you imagine if you throw one of those big bricks, and I don't care if you're a woman or a man, you're a young person, and they're like egging you on, right? And you're throwing it down at one of these cars, and it goes, smashes into the car and kills somebody. You have to live with that for the rest of your life. They're making these people do the dirty work for them. And yes, some of them are criminals. Some of them are hard-hearted, but there's some of them that are just egged on. And that's what the president of Mexico just did. Egged them on. It's disgusting. That's what Gavin Newsom just did. Just egg them on. That's what, who supplied all of these bricks and these pallets of bricks and the pallets of stones and all of the Molotov who provided all this? Is a lot of money. Go try to buy a pallet of stones. I bought a pallet of stones for my garden edging. It's expensive. It's expensive. Who's paying for all of this? And they're egging them on to become criminals, to do their dirty work for them so that they can raise money. Oh, we love you so much. We'll give you all this free stuff. And they, it's so disgusting but it's so obvious. And so the numbers right now, and I think that Trump has a real chance to turn California red, to turn California a conservative, because the liberals are just absolutely obvious how far down the spirally hole to hell they have gone, and they just want to grab as many people to go down with them. It's just so obvious. So I hope that President Trump gives a honest picture of our military, because we need a strong military now more than ever. More than ever, we need a strong military. And we can't have it with the likes of Sean Bernabe. He will absolutely show his true colors and betray. Just like Taylor did the other day. Major General Taylor just absolutely showed his true colors. He is just a traitor. The commander of Fort Bliss. He's a traitor. And that's right there at the front door of our country. So I can go on, and I know there's so much to say in this. I can go on for hours and hours, and I don't even need to show videos or anything, because we have so much evidence. We have the motherlode of criminality with Bob Moore alone. We have Leilani Hart's affidavit, her July 22nd, July 22, 2020, right? At the very same time as they were forcibly taking Richard out of his barracks room and ending his life and dishonoring his remains, she was submitting an affidavit of the worst, implicating herself and her family in the worst type of crimes against children. That's her own, and that includes Dallas Hart, Richard's platoon leader. So the evidence is overwhelming. The evidence against the institutions there are solid, totally solid, that they are failed institutions right now, and that they need to be restored. And I think that's the job for Governor Abbott, if he wants the sovereignty of Texas. But if he's not going to do it, should President Trump do it to make sure that Texas is running legally, that it doesn't become a cartel led failed state where the gangs, the cartel are the ones that are calling the shots? Because that's what's happening in El Paso right now. So, yeah, thank you so much. Like I said, I could go on and on. And this was started by one heroic soldier named Richard Halliday. One heroic and brave soldier named Richard Halliday, who could not be compromised, who even did a video, "I'd rather burn my money than spend it on whores and blow." Absolutely revealing the breach of trust, of duty, of the SOPs, of security on Fort Bliss. He revealed it. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless you. And this month is his birthday. This month should be his birthday. This month he should He should be celebrating his beautiful young life. Um, he should be on the verge or already married, maybe a child on the way. Um, yeah, we we need President Trump to go to Fort Bragg and tell the truth. And tell the truth. God bless you.